Hey everyone, Bitcoin will demonetize gold and real estate and stocks and bonds and even real estate like your house. Let's talk about what it means to demonetize something and how that affects you. So to understand what demonetizing is, you have to understand what monetizing is. So when something is monetized, it is when it acquires a monetary premium, meaning the thing is worth more than its use value or utility value because it is being used as money. So when something is demonetized, it means that something is losing the premium, meaning losing the increase in its value that is a result of people using it as money or as a store of value as opposed to using it for its utility value. So a lot of things have a significant monetary premium on them. Let's go back to the very beginning. When the very first person reached down and picked up a yellow lump, yellow rock that was gold, it wasn't worth anything. It was a yellow rock, just like there were black rocks and gray rocks, and there was all different colored rocks. But in this case, the rock they picked up was gold. It was yellow colored. And initially it had zero value. Because as its utility, gold is really for, in ancient times, other than its decorative value, which was sort of a collectible, there was really no value, right? I mean, they didn't have microprocessors and electronics back then, 5,000 years ago. So gold had no value. So as soon as the very first person, traded someone a lump of yellow gold in exchange for something else, or as soon as somebody acquired the gold, planning to give it to somebody else, they effectively monetized gold. That means gold went from being worth nothing to being worth something because it had a monetary premium. Now, in the case of gold, its monetary premium is almost in the entirety of its value because there are not very many industrial applications where gold is that much better than anything else. And obviously gold has decorative value, but it primarily has decorative value because it's scarce. Otherwise, people would think other colors were prettier if they were, more valuable, meaning that they were more scarce. So the very first time gold became money, that somebody used it as a store of value, it acquired a monetary premium. So what Bitcoin is doing now is removing that monetary premium little by little in gold. And what I mean by that is every single person that buys Bitcoin instead of gold is helping Bitcoin establish a monetary premium, and they are removing that monetary premium from gold. So for example, if Bitcoin did not exist, I would likely own a lot more gold than I do. But I don't. So Bitcoin's price is higher because I am part of the process of monetizing it along with every single other person who owns Bitcoin. And gold's price is slightly lower as a result of every single person who has ever bought Bitcoin that might, in a different situation or under different circumstances, have bought gold instead. So why does this apply to stocks and bonds and real estate? And the answer is because a lot of the premium in the price of stocks and bonds and real estate is actually a result of people using them as a store of value, people using them as money rather than for their utility value. So, for example, if you asked a lot of people whether they, if somebody owns their house and is making additional payments on their house, if you ask them, oh, I didn't know you were a real estate investor, they would say, no, I'm not a real estate investor. It's like, yeah, but you own your house. And the truth is, a lot of people are using their house as a store of value. They are storing wealth in their house. And because real estate is subsidized, meaning the government makes real estate, especially residential real estate, meaning the real estate that people live in, because the government makes it artificially cheap in the United States, it has led to people using their house as a form of wealth. And what that results in is a lot of people who have a house that the appraised value of their house is significantly above its utility value, meaning the house is being valued based on how much people want houses as a way of storing wealth, rather than how much people want to be warm and out of the elements, basically the value of the house just as a mechanism for getting shelter. So a lot of things have a significant premium. So for example, stocks and bonds, a lot of the value of stocks and bonds are a result of people not wanting to own stocks and bonds, but not being able to own US dollars because the US dollar loses so much value over time. So they're in stocks and bonds not because they want to be, but because they have to be, because being in money in the form of the US dollar is not viable because the US dollar is losing between 4% and 9% of its value every single year, depending on which statistics you want to look at. Some people would argue it's even losing more than that per year. Okay, so as a result of that, a lot of things, the entire economy has been financialized, meaning there are tons of assets in the economy that have a significant monetary premium on them, meaning people are using stocks and bonds and 401ks and IRAs and Roth IRAs. They're using them in the way that money was intended to be used, as a store of value. But they can't use money, at least not US dollar money, or any other fiat currency, which means made up currency by a central government, which is like paper money. All paper money is a fiat currency, or its electronic form of paper money. So they can't use that because it's losing too much value. So they're putting money in stocks and bonds and real estate, including their house, instead. And again, if you ask those people, if you approach the average person and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were you wanted to be a stock investor," they would say, "Well, I didn't, but I have to because I can't just store money in the bank because it loses value. So I have to invest in stocks and bonds or real estate like their house." So as a result, all of those have a significant monetary premium. So what Bitcoin will ultimately do, because it is a better money, is demonetize those things. More and more people will realize that it does not make sense to store up extra wealth in their house, for example, because at a time like this, it's almost impossible to sell your house. Interest rates are so high that a lot of people are locked in with mortgages of 2.8% or 3%, and they don't want to give up that mortgage. And anybody who's buying a house new, right, or used or anything like that, anybody who's buying a house at all has to get a mortgage that is more like 6 or 7%. Well, a lot of people don't want to pay a 6 or 7% mortgage, and a lot of people don't want to give up a 2.5% or 3% mortgage. And that means houses are very illiquid. That means it is very hard to buy and sell houses in the current environment. So everyone who thought their house would be a fantastic store of value because they could buy and sell it anytime they want is realizing that's not really true. That it's actually much harder to buy and sell real estate than they thought, because the real estate market goes through multi-year periods where it's very difficult to buy or sell real estate. So as people realize that it makes more sense to hold their wealth in Bitcoin, again, the premium that is on real estate as a result of people holding it like money will go away, and that premium will be reflected instead in the price of Bitcoin. So that is happening across every asset class and across every industry right now. It's just happening very slowly, and it's not happening in a completely sort of straight line. It's happening in a volatile up and down pattern. But right now, the total value of the Bitcoin network is above $2 trillion. So it's still a very small percentage of the price of stocks or the price of bonds or the price of real estate, but it's climbing. The price of Bitcoin is climbing as people are increasingly figuring out that what they really wanted all along was a better money that was liquid, that they could buy and sell anytime they wanted, that increased in value consistently, that was actually what they've been looking for, rather than what they're actually getting with stocks and bonds and real estate, which is a much riskier and much less liquid, meaning harder to buy and sell version. So anyway, over time, Bitcoin will demonetize everything that has a monetary premium, and Bitcoin itself will acquire a larger and larger and larger monetary premium, which is completely normal. That's what you expect in a functioning economy. The things that are better at money have a bigger monetary premium. The things that are worse as money have a lower monetary premium. And because Bitcoin is the perfect monetary instrument, meaning it has the ideal properties of an ideal money, ultimately it will demonetize everything that has a monetary premium. Now, the largest monetary premium of any single asset is still gold. Gold is valued at something like $18 trillion, and Bitcoin is down at a measly $2 trillion. So all of the Bitcoin in the world, I should say all of the gold in the world, is still 9 times more valuable. Actually, it's roughly 10 times more valuable, to use a round number. All the value of the gold in the world is roughly 10 times as valuable as all the Bitcoin in the world. Again, that is due to the gold's monetary premium, which has been built up over 5,000 years. But Bitcoin has already, just in 16 years, gone from 0 to 10% of gold's monetary premium. And that is accelerating. So very quickly, as Bitcoin adoption increases, the monetary premium, it will go from 10% of the price of gold to 20% to 30%, 40%, 50%, etc. And me and many others believe at some point that Bitcoin will surpass the price of gold, meaning all the Bitcoin in the world will be worth more than all the gold in the world. And right now, all the Bitcoin in the world is worth only about 10% of the price of all the gold in the world. And when I say all the gold in the world, I mean the gold that humans have actually found and dug out of the ground, not the gold that's still buried, but just the what's called above ground gold. So hopefully that helps. What that means is it's a great time to buy Bitcoin, because if you are planning to store your wealth in stocks and bonds and real estate, those are being slowly demonetized by Bitcoin, the same way that the US dollar has been, demonetized over time, because they print so much of it that everyone tries to get out of the US dollar and into something that is not subject as brutally to inflation, which is why a lot of people have assets in stocks and bonds and real estate, because the US dollar is losing value so quickly that they can't just hold their wealth in US dollars and hope for the best. And a lot of people wish they could. They wish they could just hold US dollars and everything would be okay. But it's not, because the government never stops printing money. And on average, over the last 100 years, it's printed about 7% more money every year, which means in total, your dollars are going to have about 7% less purchasing power every year, because that's how much new dollars are created out of thin air that you don't get. So what that all means is now is a great time to buy Bitcoin. It's better to buy Bitcoin on the front end of that transition, because you are getting it while Bitcoin is most aggressively being monetized and while other assets are most aggressively being demonetized. Obviously, the later you make the switch in that transition period, the less beneficial it is for you. But even the very late adopters of Bitcoin will still end up with a better money, a money that goes up in value rather than down in value. They will just not benefit from the huge premium of adoption. So as Bitcoin is adopted, obviously the price goes up much faster earlier in the adoption cycle as opposed to later in the adoption cycle. So that's what it means for something to be monetized or demonetized. And ultimately, as Bitcoin becomes the future monetary system of the world, it will demonetize everything else, which means everything else will ultimately return to its utility value, which means a house will be worth what it's worth to live in. That stocks and bonds will only be worth the earnings, meaning how much money the company can make, not a significant premium on top of that. And everything else will trend toward its utility value, meaning the value of the utility it brings to you, not the huge monetary premium that currently exists on top of stocks and bonds and real estate. What that also means is in the very long term, which will likely take many decades because gold has had a monetary premium for thousands of years, so that's not going to happen overnight, gold will slowly trend toward its decorative and industrial value, meaning its value in its ability to be used in industrial applications and its decorative value as just a pretty shiny object. And the decorative and industrial value of gold is a tiny percent of its total value, which means the vast majority of the value of gold is in its monetary premium. And that monetary premium will go away as it is consistently outcompeted by Bitcoin. So I know that's a lot of moving parts. It's kind of a tough subject, kind of a complicated subject, but that is what is happening over the course. That's what has happened over the last 16 years. And that is what will continue to happen 4 decades into the future. And obviously everyone who understands that ends up adopting Bitcoin a lot earlier. And the people who don't understand that end up buying houses, storing their value in stocks and bonds and real estate, and then finding out at some point in the future that those things did not do what they had hoped they would do with regard to increasing in value over time. Because again, they were holding an asset hoping it would keep going up forever, when the truth is they were holding an asset that was slowly being demonetized down to its utility value, which for stocks and bonds and real estate is a price significantly below today's price. So anyway, hope all that helps, and I'm here for anything you need. Thanks, everyone.